The twin suns beat down on the endless red sand. The wind howled like an angry ghost, blowing heat and grit across the empty desert. Nothing moved, nothing lived. This place was called the Death Wastes for a reason, but something was moving. A small figure stumbled across the dunes covered in a dusty cloak, boots cracked and worn from heat. It was a human, a man. His name was Jack Keller, a mechanic from Earth. He was not a soldier. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was lost. Jack coughed and fell to his knees, sand sticking to his dry lips. His water pack had been empty for a day. His Sheepa's small cargo hauler named Rust Bucket had been shot down 2 days ago by pirates. He'd crashed near a rocky ridge, and the fire had swallowed most of his supplies. He was supposed to be dead already, but Jack had one thing no one could take from him: his stubbornness. He wasn't ready to die in the sand, not yet. As he crawled up the next dune, something strange caught his eye. Black smoke, a new trail. Not from Rust Bucket. Jack narrowed his eyes and pulled out his old desert goggles. Through the cracked lens, he saw it half buried in the sand, metal torn open like a beast had slashed it. A large ship, sleek and curved. Not human-made. It was an alien ship. Jack's heart started beating faster. Maybe there were survivors. Maybe there was water. He slid down the dune, coughing as sand filled his boots. As he got closer, he realized this wasn't any normal alien craft. This was royal. The symbols on the hull shimmered gold in the sunlight, elegant spirals that moved like fire. Only one race used living metal like this: the Dracari Empire. Jack had heard stories. The Dracari were tall, proud, and dangerous. They were known for riding dragons bred from biotech, and their royalty never traveled without their beasts. Jack approached slowly, hand resting on the tool pistol strapped to his hip. He called out, "Hello, anyone alive in there?" No answer. He stepped through the torn side of the ship. Inside, it was cooler barely. Sparks hissed from broken wires. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the ship itself was still breathing. He passed through a corridor and stopped. There were signs of a fight: burn marks, broken armor, blood trails, and then he heard it. A low, weak growl. Jack spun around and pointed his pistol. A pair of golden eyes glowed from the shadows. Something was crouched near the far wall. It shifted forward, and he finally saw it. A dragon not like the old Earth stories, but something sleek, shining with silver blue scales and dark metal wings. It was young, maybe injured. A strange collar around its neck blinked red. Jack saw blood on its leg. He lowered his weapon. "Easy, buddy. I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon didn't move. Then Jack saw the second one. This one was smaller, barely breathing. Smoke came from its side, and its chest rose and fell with painful effort. It let out a soft cry, most like a child. Jack's face hardened. These creatures, they weren't just machines. They were alive. Someone had left them behind. He knelt beside the younger one, pulling out a tool from his belt. The damage wasn't too deep, but the metal flesh skin was cracked and leaking fluid. He started patching it with what he had left. Behind him, the larger dragon watched silently as Jack worked. He noticed something glowing in the wallapod. Inside was a figure, tall, armor shattered, skin faintly glowing blue. His chest barely moved. He looked noble, even in pain. Jack froze. "Holy hell," he whispered. "You're the Dracari Prince." He had seen the news on the space stations. The crown prince of the Dracari Empire had vanished during a diplomatic trip. Rumors said his convoy was attacked by rebels. And now here he was, dying in the sand. His dragons barely alive. Jack looked at the broken ship. It wouldn't fly again. No distress signal. No help coming. He sighed. Of course. Just my luck. He had two choices. Leave them and try to survive alone, or stay and help. He looked at the dragons. The smaller one whimpered softly, nuzzling his hand. Jack made his choice. He grabbed some cables and started building a shade. The desert sun would kill them all if he didn't work fast. The ship had a power core still glowing. Maybe he could drain it for water or a signal. "I'm not a hero," he muttered. "I fix junk. I don't save royal pets." But deep inside, he knew this wasn't about saving dragons or princes. It was about doing what was right. He dragged parts from the engine room, sweating, breathing hard. The larger dragon even helped, pushing some scrap with its nose. Jack smiled weakly. "Guess we're working together, huh?" As night came, the temperature dropped sharply. Jack wrapped the dragons in emergency foil blankets, then set a small campfire from some burnt wiring. He sat beside them, looking at the stars. Somewhere up there, a war was coming, and in this forgotten desert, a human mechanic had just saved. The only ones who might stop it. The cold desert night had a strange silence. No insects, no birds. Just the wind whispering over the sand dunes and the occasional groan of the wrecked alien ship behind them. Jack Keller sat between the two dragons, his small fire crackling weakly. The larger dragon, whom Jack now called Steelwing, lay with its glowing eyes half closed. The smaller one he named her Ember curled close to him, shivering slightly under the emergency blanket. Jack stared at the stars. If anyone told me I'd be stuck in a desert with two dragons and a half-dead alien prince, I'd have laughed in their face. The prince still hadn't woken up. He was locked inside a biopod, his breathing shallow. Jack had checked his vitals with a scanner. From the ship, the readings were bad internal bleeding, broken ribs, dehydration. The pod was keeping him alive, but just barely. Jack's biggest problem was time. The dragons were healing slowly, thanks to his quick patch-up job. But there was no food, no clean water, and no help coming. The distress signal he'd rigged from the power core was weak. He'd boosted it as much as possible using some jury-rigged coils and a broken navigation antenna, but he wasn't sure anyone would hear it, especially in the death wastes. The Drakari Empire might be searching, but even if they were, this desert stretched for thousands of kilometers. He needed a plan. As dawn broke, the suns rising over the horizon like two burning eyes. Jack stood and stretched his aching back. "All right, kids," he said to the dragons. "We can't stay here. We need water, food, shelter, and a way to move." He walked around the ship again, searching for anything useful. In the lower cargo bay, he found something he hadn't expected: hover sleds. Sleek, light, and mostly intact. Two of them, probably used for short-distance patrol or sand scouting. "Now that's what I'm talking about." Jack grinned. He dragged the first one out with the help of Steelwing, who was stronger than he looked. Ember followed behind, her limp a little better now. Jack connected a few wires, reset the power cores, and the sleds came to life with a low hum. "Still got the touch," he smiled proudly. "All right, here's the deal. We ride to the nearest beacon station. Should be about 60 kilometers east, according to the prince's map." He brought up the dusty navigation tablet. The beacon station was old, but still marked on the map. If they reached it, maybe he could send a stronger signal or, at least, find supplies. Before they left, Jack checked on the prince one more time. He placed a small oxygen booster into the pod and whispered, "Don't die on me, Your Highness. I'm not dragging your dragons across a desert for nothing." He loaded the pod onto one sled. It was heavy, but the engine could handle it. He and the dragons climbed onto the other. The suns climbed higher. Heat shimmered in waves. But the sleds glided across the sand, leaving soft trails behind them. Ember leaned against Jack's side as they moved. Steelwing flew low above them at times, gliding like a shadow in the sky. Jack was surprised. These dragons were starting to trust him. He was just a human mechanic. No royal blood, no great power, but they followed him anyway, halfway to the beacon. Station Jack noticed something strange. Tracks. Big ones, not dragon, not human. Machines. He slowed the sled and scanned the sand. The tracks were fresh, deep grooves. Four-legged walkers, possibly pirate scouts or scavenger bots. Not good. He muttered. If they find the prince. He pushed the sled harder as they neared the station. Jack saw it rise from the desert-tan old metal tower, half collapsed but still standing. Panels broken. Wind howling through its rusted shell. He parked the sleds near the base and looked. Around, stay close, he told the dragons, inside. The station was dark. Wires hung like spiderwebs, screens cracked and covered in dust. Jack found the main console and tried to power it up. Nothing. He cursed under his breath and ripped open. The access panel? He started rewiring the old system, fingers moving fast. Ember sniffed the floor while Steelwing stood guard outside. Minutes passed. Then dash beep. The console flickered to life. A weak signal icon glowed. Yes. Jack laughed. Let's make some noise. He sent a repeating SOS message, attached with Drakari royal codes he copied from the prince's pod. If the Empire was listening, they'd hear it. But just as he was about to relax, a distant rumble shook the ground. Ember growled. Steelwing raised his head and roared. Jack ran to the door. On the horizon, dust clouds were rising. 4 black shapes were speeding toward them fast, mean and armed. Raiders, or worse, slavers. Jack's heart raced. He looked at the half-broken station, at the dragons, at the prince still unconscious. I just wanted to fix engines, he whispered. Now I'm about to fight space pirates with dragons. Steelwing let out a powerful roar, flames licking. The sand in front of him, Jack grabbed his tool pistol, rechecked the power cells, and nodded to the dragons. Let's show them what a human mechanic can do. The wind roared louder as 4 black attack skimmers tore across the desert, dust trailing behind like smoke from a volcano. Each skimmer had mounted cannons and armor plating. Symbols painted in blood red told Jack everything he needed to know. Desert raiders, no mercy, no rules. Jack stood in front of the old beacon station, tool pistol gripped tight in his hand. The prince's life pod was hidden inside behind a barricade of metal crates. Ember crouched beside Jack, teeth bared, wings flicking. Steelwing was already in the air, circling like a silent hunter above. All right, Jack said under his breath. Let's not die today. The skimmers slowed as they got closer, forming a half circle. One raider stepped out, tall and ugly, wearing rusted armor with spikes on the shoulders. His eyes were hidden behind black goggles. He had a plasma rifle in one hand and a cruel grin on his face. Well, well, the raider said through a speaker, voice distorted. A human? In the death wastes, with dragons. This is my lucky day. Jack didn't answer. The raider pointed his rifle. Hand over the prince and the dragons, or I'll burn you to ash. Jack stared at him. You want him? Come and get him. The raider laughed. Your funeral. The skimmers roared back to life. 2 raiders jumped off and charged forward with blasters. Jack fired first. One blast hit the lead raider in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Ember leaped at the second, slamming him into the sand and pinning him down. Her sharp teeth were inches from his face. The third raider opened fire with a cannon dot. Boom. The front of the beacon station exploded, sending metal flying. Jack was thrown back. His ears rang. When he stood up, he saw Steelwing diving down from the sky. Like a missile, the dragon hit the cannon skimmer with full force, claws ripping through the metal. Flames burst from Steelwing's mouth, melting armor and sending the raiders scrambling. One of the skimmers exploded. The other raiders panicked. Two tried to retreat. Jack limped forward, firing again, hitting one in the leg. Ember spun and tackled the last standing raider, biting into his weapon arm. Steelwing landed beside Jack, roaring loud enough to shake the ground. It was over in minutes. The surviving raiders fled, skimmers smoking, too afraid to stay. They vanished over the dunes. Jack dropped to one knee, breathing hard. His arm was burned. His leg was bleeding from shrapnel. But he was alive. More importantly, the prince was safe. He turned toward the beacon tower. Inside, the pod still glowed, untouched. Jack limped inside, dragging some supplies from the destroyed skimmer. He patched his leg and checked the pod again. Still, stable, but no signs of waking up. "Come on, Your Highness," Jack whispered. "I'm out here getting shot at for you. Time to open your royal eyes." Suddenly, the pod blinked. Once, twice, then it hissed open. Jack stepped back as the figure inside stirred. The Dracari Princedoll, silver-skinned, with glowing veins and long hair, opened his eyes. He looked around slowly, confused. His gaze landed on Jack. Then the dragons. Then the wreckage. "You," the prince said, voice dry and cracked. "You are not Dracari." "Nope," Jack replied. "I'm just a mechanic from Earth, and I just saved your royal backside." The prince blinked again. Where are we?" "The Death Wastes," Jack said. "You were shot down. I found your ship. Your dragons were wounded. You were dying. So I fixed things. It's kind of what I do." The prince looked at Ember, who was gently licking her wounds. Then at Steelwing, who nodded once in respect. "You helped them." "I helped all of you," Jack said. "You don't have to thank me. But you do have to help me now. Because if those raiders come back, I'm going to need more than duct tape and a screwdriver to stop them." The prince stood, wobbling slightly. He placed a hand on Ember's head, then on Steelwing's. The dragons responded with soft growls, nuzzling his arms. "They remember you," the prince said. "They trust you." "Yeah," Jack replied. "Strange, right?" The prince turned to him. His glowing eyes burned like twin suns. "You have done what no Dracari warrior could. You saved the bloodline. You saved my dragons. For that, human, I owe you everything." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Everything, huh? Well, in that case, got any water?" The sun had just started to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. The wreckage of the raider skimmer still smoked on the sand. Jack Keller sat on a cracked metal crate, wrapping a bandage around his arm. Ember was curled beside him, resting her head on his boot. The Dracari prince stood nearby, tall and proud even if he was still weak. He wore a torn royal coat, stained with blood and sand. His silver skin shimmered in the fading light. His glowing eyes watched everything with quiet intensity. "You fixed the dragons," he said again, as if he still couldn't believe it. "I'm a mechanic," Jack replied, tightening the bandage with a wince. "Fixing things is what I do. Ships, engines, weapons, ... dragons, I guess." The prince nodded slowly. "Your name?" "Jack Keller. Earthborn cargo hauler." Currently broke and stranded in the Death Wastes, the prince gave a slight bow. "I am Kaler Veldracker, Crown Prince of the Dracari Empire. You have done a great service for me and my bloodbound. I do not forget such debts." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Bloodbound." Kaler looked at Steelwing and Ember. These dragons are not pets. They are part of me, connected by fire and spirit. When they suffer, I suffer. When they trust you, I must also trust. Jack looked down at Ember, who was now snoring softly. Well, that explains a lot. Kaler looked out across the desert. The raiders who attacked us. They work for someone who wants me dead. This was not just a crash, it was a betrayal. Jack stood up, brushing sand off his pants. Yeah, I figured. The ship looked like it was sabotaged. Cuts through the engine wiring weren't made by weapons, they were done by hand. Keller's jaw tightened. A traitor among my guard. Jack crossed his arms. Well, lucky for you, your dragons didn't give up, and neither did I. There was a moment of silence between them. Then Kaler stepped forward and placed his hand over Jack's chest. His palm glowed faintly with blue light. What are you doing? Jack asked, uneasy. Keller's voice was calm. A bond. It will help protect you. You are now recognized by the dragons. They will listen to your voice, even in battle. Jack stepped back. Whoa, what do you mean in battle? You think this is over? Kaler looked into the distance. It has just begun. They spent the night at the beacon station, hiding in its shadow. Jack rewired the communications array and boosted the SOS signal to a stronger now. If anyone from the Drakari fleet was searching, they might hear it. Meanwhile, Kaler meditated, his dragons close beside him. He chanted words in the Drakari tongue low, humming sounds that made the air around them feel heavy. Jack didn't understand the language, but the meaning was clear. It was ancient, powerful, sacred. The next morning, they prepared to move. Steelwing would fly ahead, scouting the way. Jack and Kaler would ride the hover sled with Ember protecting the rear. Where are we heading? Jack asked as they loaded the last of the supplies. Kaler looked at the map Jack had repaired. There is an old Drakari outpost, hidden in the canyon cliffs. It was once used by royal hunters during the blood trials, now abandoned. If we reach it, we'll be safe. Jack frowned. How far? 3 days, if we're not stopped. Jack muttered under his breath. That's always the catch. They left before the heat became too harsh. The sled skimmed across the sand, its engine whining softly. Kaler sat beside Jack, still silent, his mind clearly elsewhere. After a long stretch of riding, Jack finally spoke. So, what happens if your people don't come? Kaler didn't answer right away. Then he said, then we survive on our own. Like you already have. Jack smirked. Nice to know royalty knows how to rough it. As they crossed a wide stretch of dunes, Steelwing suddenly dropped down from the sky and landed hard in front of them, kicking up sand. He growled. Wings tense. What is it? Jack asked, eyes scanning the horizon. Kaler stood on the sled, narrowing his eyes. Trouble. In the distance, the ground shimmered unnaturally. Something massive moved beneath. The sand, fast and silent. It circled them. Then a shape burst from the ground. A sand-dash beast, huge 12 meters long, covered in armored plates and dozens of legs. Its mouth opened in 4 parts, dripping acid. Jack stared in horror. You've got to be kidding me. Beast charged. Ember roared and flew forward, crashing into it with fire and claw. The creature shrieked and rolled, trying to trap her in its coils. Steelwing joined the fight from above, slamming down with his metal wings. Kaler jumped off the sled, drawing a blade made of glowing plasma. He ran straight toward the beast. Jack hesitated, then pulled out his tool pistol and followed. The battle was chaos. Fire lit the sand. The beast's screech shook the sky. Jack fired into its joints while Kaler slashed at its legs. The dragons attacked in perfect rhythm, defending each other, protecting Kaler and Jack. Finally, Ember latched onto the beast's neck and let out a blast of concentrated flame. The creature writhed, then went still. Dead. Everyone was panting. Jack fell to one knee, exhausted. "Can I go one day?" he gasped, without nearly dying. Kaler helped him up. "You fought well." "I didn't have a choice. You had 1,000 chances to run," Kaler said. "But you stayed." Jack met his eyes. "Yeah, I guess I did." As they continued their journey, Jack couldn't help but notice how things were changing. Kaler was no longer just some alien prince. He was a fighter, a leader, and Jack was no longer just a mechanic. He had become something more. Trusted by dragons, respected by a prince, and walking into a future he didn't understand but was no longer afraid of. Because for the first time in his life, he belonged somewhere, even if it was in the middle of a war. The sun had nearly disappeared by the time Jack, Kaler, and the dragons reached the cliffs. Massive walls of red stone rose from the sand, jagged like teeth. The wind screamed through the narrow canyons, carrying the sound of their sled's engine deeper into the ancient rocks. Jack tightened his grip on the handlebars and looked around. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. Kaler nodded. "It should. Many died here during the blood trials." Jack blinked. "That's comforting." They turned a sharp corner between two cliffs, and the outpost appeared built into the side of the rock wall. It was old, but strong. Carved stone mixed with high-tech metal, shaped like wings folded into the mountain. The door was tall and sealed shut, ancient symbols glowing faintly on the surface. Kaler stepped forward and placed his hand on the door. It lit up, scanning his palm. "Kaler Valdracker." "Crown Heir," he said aloud. The ground rumbled with a deep hiss. The door slid open. Inside, the air was cold and still. The walls were marked with faded banners of the Drakari royal family. Long-dead torches flickered to life as the group entered. The floor was covered in dust undisturbed for years. It was built for hunting parties, Kaler said, but later used as a secret retreat. No one should know of it. Jack looked around. "Good, because we've had enough company." Stealing walked ahead, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows. Ember stayed close to Jack, her tail brushing his boot. The prince checked a control panel and powered up the base. Lights flickered on. A low hum filled the air. "There's food, water, medical supplies. And enough fuel to call for help. Real help this time," Kaler said. Jack gave a tired smile. Finally, something goes right. But the moment was short. Steelwing suddenly growled low and dangerous, Ember hissed. Her eyes locked onto a dark hallway on the far side of the chamber. Jack raised his pistol. "What is it?" Kaler stepped forward, blade ready. "Something's here." They moved carefully through the hallway, the dragons leading the way. Every step echoed. Jack's gut twisted. Something felt wrong. The air was too cold. The shadows, too deep. Then they saw it. A body Drakari armor, burnt, torn open from the inside. Kaler knelt and touched the armor. "This was one of my royal guards." Jack's eyes narrowed. "But you said no one else should know about this place." "They shouldn't," Kaler whispered. A strange clicking sound echoed through the halls. The lights flickered. From the shadows above, a shape dropped silent, fast. Jack fired without thinking. The shot lit up the room. Man revealed the attacker. Not a beast, not a raider. Something worse. It was humanoid, but twisted half Drakari, half machine. Its eyes glowed red. Its mouth opened wider than it should have, lined with sharp metal teeth. Its fingers ended in blades. "Voitspawn," Kaler growled. Jack fired again, hitting it in the chest. It stumbled but didn't fall. Steelwing roared and crashed into it, slamming the creature against the wall. Ember followed, biting and tearing at its limbs. Sparks flew. The creature shrieked and tried to escape, but Keller's blade struck its neck, slicing it clean off. It fell, twitching, then went still. What the hell was that? Jack breathed. Keller wiped his blade. A corrupted Drakari, modified by machines, twisted by the void. A weapon used by traitors. Very rare and very deadly. Jack looked around. If one made it in here, there could be more. There are more, Keller said. This was a trap. Back in the main hall, Jack and Keller checked the outpost's records. Someone had accessed the systems only 2 days ago. The false beacon had been sent, one that led the void spawn straight here. A tracking signal, Keller said. They followed the prince's bloodline. And they're not done. Jack leaned over the console. So we're not safe yet. No, Keller replied. We're not. Just then, an alarm blared. Incoming contact. Multiple fast Jacks. Stomach dropped. They found us again. Keller turned to the dragons. Prepare for battle. Jack grabbed his pistol and his tool pack. You sure we can fight them all? Keller looked at him with steady eyes. If we don't, we die. Jack nodded. Then let's make sure they regret finding us. As the night fell, the shadows outside moved again. The outpost was no longer a safe house. It was a battleground, and deep in the desert. Something worse was still coming. The sky above the canyon was black. No stars, no moon, only darkness. Inside the old Drakari outpost, alarms kept blaring. Red lights flashed along the ancient stone walls. Jack Keller stood with Keller and the dragons facing the main entrance. His heart thudded in his chest like a hammer. Steelwing paced near the door, wings tense. Ember growled softly, her tail twitching. Both dragons could feel it coming. The enemy, Keller checked his sword's charge. There are at least 5 of them approaching, possibly more. Void spawn, Jack asked. Keller nodded. Yes, corrupted. Soldiers, broken minds, mush-infested bodies, created to hunt and destroy. Jack swallowed hard. Well, that's lovely. Any idea how we stop them? Keller looked at the dragons. With fire, with courage. And with you? Jack blinked. Me. You are bonded now, Keller said. They trust you. Ember will listen to your commands, even fight for you. Jack looked at Ember. Her glowing yellow eyes met his. She stepped forward and pressed her head to his chest. He placed his hand gently between her horns. Guess we're in this together, huh? The first wave came fast. The ground shook as mechanical footsteps pounded the earth. The main door exploded inward. Metal and stone flew through the room. Jack raised his pistol and fired. The void spawn charged thin, fast, all sharp edges and red eyes. One leaped at Jack. Before it landed, Ember tackled it midair, slamming it against a pillar with a fiery roar. Steelwing dived from above, claws shredding through to others in seconds. Keller moved like lightning, his plasma blade flashing with each swing. Sparks and blood flew. Jack ducked behind a broken console, reloading. One of the creatures spotted him and lunged. He rolled aside and fired twice. The second shot hit the thing's face, blowing it apart. Another grabbed Jack's leg, but Ember was there in a flash, biting down on the creature's spine. She tossed it aside like it weighed nothing. More came. 10. 15. Jack was bleeding. From the shoulder, Keller was limping, his side slashed. Steelwing's wing was scorched. Ember had a cut on her neck. They were being pushed back. We can't hold them forever. Jack shouted. We don't have to. Kaler said, his eyes burning brighter. "We just need one chance." He grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him toward a central chamber deeper in the outpost. Steelwing and Ember fought like wild storms. Bang. Them timed on the center of the outpost was a soulfire Cora, glowing crystal surrounded by ancient energy conduits. It pulsed like a heart. Kaler pointed at it. "This is a Drakari core node. If I bond my life to it, I can awaken the full power of this place. The defenses, the fire traps, the entire fortress." Jack stared. "Sounds great. Why didn't we do this earlier?" Keller's face darkened. "Because bonding will drain me. I may not survive it." Jack shook his head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Kaler said quietly. "But you can help." Kala placed Jack's hand on the crystal. A strange heat passed through him. Images flashed in his mind, dragon wings, fire, starlight, the roar of forgotten battles. He saw Ember's eyes, Steelwing's flight, Keller's pain, his duty, burden. He was no longer just Jack Keller, a mechanic. He was part of something ancient now, Kaler said, voice strained. Together, they both focused. The crystal glowed brighter. The floor shook. All around the outpost, ancient systems activated turrets unfolded. Flame traps hissed. The walls themselves shimmered. With energy shields, Kaler collapsed to one knee. "Go. Help the dragons." Jack ran back to the entrance. Ember and Steelwing were exhausted. The Void Spawn were regrouping for another charge. But this time, Jack stood tall. He looked at Ember and whispered, "Now." She rose, fire swirling. Around her jaws, Steelwing soared above, lightning crackling from his wings. The dragons unleashed their fury. Fire exploded through the hallway. Void Spawn screamed as they burned. The auto turrets opened fire. The traps lit up, engulfing the invaders in molten flame. Jack fought beside Ember, using every tool, every trick, every ounce of strength. He wasn't a warrior, but he had courage, and that was enough. Finally, silence. The last Void Spawn collapsed in a smoking heap. The floor was littered with broken metal and ash. The outpost was scorched, but still standing. Kaler lay beside the crystal, weak but alive. Jack helped him sit up. "You didn't die. That's a good sign." Kaler gave a weak smile. "Thanks to you." Ember limped over and licked Jack's cheek. He laughed through the pain. "We survived," he whispered. "Somehow." Kaler nodded. "And now? The galaxy must hear the truth. There's a traitor in the Empire, one who commands the Void Spawn, one who wants me and the dragons dead." Jack looked at the horizon through the shattered doors. "Then I guess we're not done yet." 2 days passed since the battle at the outpost. The smoke had cleared. The wounded had rested. Jack Keller sat quietly near the Soulfire core, watching Kaler sleep. The Drakari prince looked pale, but alive. The bonding with the outpost had nearly killed him, but it also saved them all. Steelwing rested outside, perched on a cliff ledge. Like a silent guardian, Ember lay beside Jack, her head in his lap. Her wounds had healed well. She had grown stronger. They all had. Jack scratched behind her horn. "We made it through. Tay, but it's not over, is it?" As if answering him, the outpost's console beeped. "Incoming transmission. Royal channel." Kaler stirred. Slowly, he stood and walked to the screen. He pressed his hand to the panel. A blue hologram blinked to life. An older Drakari male appeared tall, dressed in dark robes with cold, lifeless eyes. Lord Vareth.klar tensed. Uncle Jack frowned. "That's your uncle." Kaler nodded. "Hi, Lord Vareth, the Emperor's brother. He served as regent while I was away." Jack watched the screen, There was something wrong about Vareth. Too calm, too smooth. Too quiet, Prince Kaler. Vareth said smoothly. Imagine my surprise to find you alive. I was told you perished in a tragic crash. Keller's voice was steady, and yet, here I stand, along with my dragons and a witness. Vareth smiled. Yes, the human. I've heard of him. A mechanic? Correct. Strange company for a prince. Jack stepped forward. Strange times call for strange allies. You should have stayed dead, Vareth said, dropping the smile. Now, you force me to clean up the mess myself. The screen blinked out. Jack looked at Kaler. So, that's the traitor. Kaler nodded grimly. He arranged the attack. He controls the void spawn. He wants the throne. Just then, Steelwing roared from outside. Jack and Kaler rushed. To the balcony in the sky, a Drakari warship, black and gold, descending fast. Dropships followed, heading toward the canyon. Jack gripped the rail. He's coming to finish the job. Kaler turned to him. Then we stand together. One last time. Within the hour, the dropships landed. Dozens of soldiers emerged, Drakari, but changed. Faces hidden by helmets. Movements stiff. Eyes glowing red. Void augmented. Controlled. Twisted, Vareth himself arrived in a tall hover chariot, surrounded by guards. Jack, Kaler, Ember, and Steelwing stood at the outpost's gate. You really want to do this? Jack called out. You're fighting your own blood. Vareth sneered. The Empire needs strength, not compassion. The dragons belong to me now. Steelwing growled. Ember snapped her jaws. Kaler stepped forward. No, uncle. They belong to no one. They are not tools. They are living souls. Vareth raised his hand. Kill them. The army charged. The final battle began. The ground shook as Ember leaped into the fray, flames exploding from her mouth. Steelwing flew low, smashing into enemy lines with wings of fury. Jack fought beside Kaler, using grenades and shock tools. Keller's blade flashed bright blue, cutting through armor like paper. But the enemy was endless. One by one, Keller's systems failed. Jack's weapon ran dry. Steelwing was wounded, blood and sparks dripping from his flank. Ember fell back too. Protect Jack. Kaler faced Vareth in the center of the battlefield. You are not fit to rule. Kaler said, I am what the Empire needs. Vareth snapped. Drawing a dark sword infused with void energy, they clashed. Metal screamed. Sparks flew. Kaler was fast, but Vareth was stronger. Kaler was knocked to his knees. Vareth raised his sword for the killing blow boom. A fireball slammed into Vareth, knocking him back. Jack stood at the edge of the battlefield, one last explosive device in his hand. I told you not to mess with mechanics. Steelwing crashed down beside Kaler, shielding him. Ember stood over. Jack, growling low. Vareth rose, furious. Do you think this changes anything? Kaler stood beside Jack. No, but this will. He held up a small crystal, the blood key. It glowed with the soulfire bond. Jack helped form with one word. Kaler activated the beacon system. High above. The Empire's royal fleet came out of hyperspace, responding to the hidden signal Kaler had activated during the bonding. Dozens of ships, thousands of soldiers, all loyal to the true heir. Vareth looked up in horror. You called them. Keller's voice was calm. This ends now. The loyal fleet descended. Vareth's forces surrendered. He was arrested and taken away. The void spawn, without his control, shut down. It was over. Hours later, Jack sat beside Ember, watching the royal ships land and clear the canyon. Kaler stood beside him, now in full ceremonial armor. You didn't have to stay, Kaler said. Jack smiled. I didn't have to do a lot of things, but I did. Kaler offered his hand. Come with us. To the capital, you will be honored. You will be remembered. Jack looked at the dragons. Ember nudged his side. Steelwing nodded once. I guess. Jack said, standing up, a mechanic can be more than a fixer. Kaler grinned. You are fireborn now, chosen by dragons. Forged in battle. Kay looked out across the desert, once a grave, now a memory. I thought I'd die out here. He whispered. But you didn't, Kaler said. You changed the fate of an empire.